Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. What does it mean? What does it look like? There's all these generic answers of what ADHD actually is, but let me share you what it looks like for my kids.
Raising neurodivergent kids is messy, beautiful, and a lot. I'm Mary Ellen Yates, and this is Growing Together, Neurodiversity at Home. Let's figure it out together.
Okay, let's get started. So, my oldest, I could tell around 2 that he was having symptoms of ADHD. He was very restless. He moved around a lot. He had a hard time sitting still. He was always fidgeting with things. Again, some of these things can be normal developmental behavior for kids. So, my oldest 2 have been diagnosed with ADHD so far. My oldest is 11, and then my other one is almost 7. And then I have a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. At this point, we're assuming that they all are neurodivergent in some way. My husband is, I am, our extended families are, but the youngest 2 have not been diagnosed at this point, and we're just watching them for now. My second son, who is almost 7, was diagnosed last year with mild ADHD. Since his autistic traits were way more obvious, it wasn't something that was really on my radar, but I could definitely see signs when I would do school with him that I was questioning if he might have ADHD. For him, it looks like easily distracted, or he will have a hard time starting a task of school that he doesn't feel like doing, or he might start daydreaming. He fidgets a little bit, but that's what he looks like. But my older son is definitely affected by ADHD symptoms a lot. And so I'm mostly going to talk about him today. He's 11. He's also been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. He also has dyslexia. So some of these things might not necessarily be exactly ADHD, but definitely a sign of neurodivergence. So during early development, he fell within the early major milestones, but he was on the later side for things. He has another diagnosis that could have affected some of this as well, that I'll talk about in another episode. But like crawling, he was backwards crawling for a while. He was on the later side for that, probably 10 or 11 months. He didn't start walking until he was 13 months. Still within normal. He was almost 3 before he started speaking. I got him into speech therapy at 2 years old, and it still took almost a year before he was speaking. While this is not a sign of ADHD specifically, there's a high comorbidity with having ADHD and also having speech and language difficulties. But that can also be other neurodivergence as well, like autism, like dyslexia. There was many reasons why he could have been speaking later. But it's also a red flag for providers and parents to keep an eye on as they're suspecting that something else might be going on. Like I said, at 2, he was very restless. He was moving around a lot. He was very hard to keep contained. We would put up baby gates and he would just push them down or ram into them to break them down. He did not like barriers at all. Even at that age, luckily he was my first. I was able to go to the playgrounds a lot. I was always trying to burn his energy. We would go to the library often, usually once a week, and we would get the max amount of books because he loved books. I think our max was 13. We'd take 13 home, and then we would just like sit and read books. And I always enjoyed the reading because that was like the only time that I was able or allowed to sit, because otherwise we were going, trying to keep up with him. So we enjoyed our reading time. He did do that. He might fidget a little bit, but he's always loved listening to stories. I did try some TV. Screen time is a big hot button topic with child development in general. So I was mostly trying to get my kids to play and stuff, but every now and then, if I was trying to get another project done or something, I might turn on the TV. I noticed behavioral issues every time I introduced screens. He would have tantrums. It took a long time for him to regulate again after. He'd become very whiny. And so I just cut them out for a long time because whininess wasn't worth the little bit of time that I had to do things without him being underfoot. So that was another thing that I noticed. He had tantrums often. He would get frustrated a lot. He had a hard time speaking until he was almost 3. So he would get frustrated very easily. He couldn't communicate properly. So He would hit, or one time he hit a kid with his water bottle, which happened to be a stainless steel water bottle. I think he bit a couple of times. Or one time a friend came over and he was excited that this kid came over and threw water on the kid because he was excited. A lot of times he didn't know how to express his feelings and how to show how he was feeling. And so even at a young age, we would work on blowing bubbles or breathing techniques to help him with those hard emotions. As he got older, he would still throw tantrums. I remember when he was about 5, and I had my 1-year-old, my second son, with me a lot, and he would try to get out at us when he was having a tantrum. And so I would often have to say, "We don't feel safe," and would have to remove me and the baby from where he was, or I would hug him really tight, and sometimes that pressure would really help him calm down, but it just kind of depended on the feeling of what would work for him at that time. He would also throw things when he was having tantrums and damage some things too. He all went through a lot of toys, and not even just out of anger, just out of curiosity, or he was very rough with toys. He played very rough. He lost a friend once. He was very particular about his things, and Brett was rough with them and sometimes would break his things. And eventually we just didn't hang out as much because the kid would get really upset and it just wasn't a good fit, unfortunately, even though my son really liked the kid. I've gotten pretty selective with the things I'll even allow in our house because I just know they're going to get broken. So a lot of times I avoid those things. I try to stick to a lot of outdoor things that can just stay outside or that get some pent up energy out. He often avoids tasks that require a lot of focus. He does like, to some degree, mazes and puzzles if they're not too hard. 4 years old, I had just had my second son. And so we tried preschool for my son. It was a private Christian school that some friends had recommended. Looking back, it was not a good fit. I wonder if things would have gone differently if we'd even just tried public school or like a Montessori school or some other kind of school, but we didn't. We tried this Christian school and he lasted about 3 months and it did not go well. He was sent to the principal's office often. He was having issues on the bus. He was throwing water at other kids and not sitting still. Later on, years later, my son disclosed to me that he was being picked on by the other kids, and that's why he was throwing water on them, but we didn't know that at the time. They had a smiley face system, and he never came home with 3 smiley faces. And we started seeing his mood and his self esteem change with that because he would try so hard and he just could not get those 3 smiley faces. And so that was becoming really sad. And I still feel really sad about preschool because I didn't notice him feeling down about himself until that point when he realized that other kids could achieve this thing and he couldn't. But some other things that were happening during schools, during transitions, when they would line up, one time he picked up the pointer because he was next to the chalkboard and hit some kids because he swung it. During school time, when they were supposed to be doing their work, he would always try to push his feet as far as he could to touch the other kids beneath the desks. He would rifle through the teacher's belongings or the teacher's supplies. During nap time, if he didn't go to sleep, he would cut up a whole bunch of paper to have something to do. And then I was getting calls a lot, and the principal finally suggested that we try again next year, that maybe he just wasn't ready since he was just 4. And so we decided to pull him out, and then we never went back to public school. We've just homeschooled since then. Around 5 years old, we moved to Germany. So at this point, I cut everyone's hair, but I wasn't cutting everyone's hair in the beginning. And so one time I found an American hairdresser that did haircuts in her home, and she did my hair, and then she also did the other kids' hair, and she had toys, and she also had kids of her own. And so during that time, while we were waiting, my son was trying to play with her kids and they didn't want to play with him. And so he ended up peeing on a lot of his stuff. So that was a behavioral issue that we had during that time. It was a short lived thing, but it was something he didn't know how to express himself. He was feeling really sad. And it was also a time of a big transition. And so that happened. Restlessness. He's always having to fidget with his hands or his feet. If he feels something on the floor, he's scraping it or rolling it along the floor. He usually has things in his pockets that he's fidgeting with in his hands, or he's often putting things in his mouth, often Legos or things that he's chewing on or mouthing while he's doing other things. For quite a while, would chew on his clothing, wristbands that he could chew on so that he wouldn't get holes in all of his stuff. Or I've tried the jewelry bracelets, but he would chew on them for a little bit and then they'd get thrown off, they get lost and whatever, but clothes were always there. So that was another thing he did quite often, needing that extra sensory input. Another thing, he also takes most things to extremes. My kids love Play-Doh and will set up Play-Doh at the kitchen table, and everyone can do that for a while. And then I may go to the bathroom or step into my room for a second. I come out. Next thing I know, he's throwing it against the wall. It's in the carpet. I used to try putty and slime and all those things, and my husband has vetoed those because it was just getting everywhere because it always ended up being something else. Or one time they decided, so in Germany, they didn't have ceiling fans. Well, in the States, they do, especially being in Georgia. It's hot. You have fans in every room. And so one time he decided, oh, I'm going to throw peaches at the spinning fan and see what happens. And we have like peach splatter all over our walls, and then they're still stained to this day. Or one time we found salami in our light bulb fixtures. We've had screens cut. We've had a protective chair for dining room chairs. We've had those cut. We've had Tupperware lids cut, things like that. Following directions is extremely hard for him. Usually we have to do one step at a time. If we do multiple steps, often one of those steps are going to be forgotten or he's going to get distracted along the way. Go brush your teeth and put on your shoes. He might make it to the bathroom. He might not because he has 3 other siblings. And then the shoes are probably just not going to happen. So doing one step at a time if we need. That's why visual schedules are really important for us and timers are really important for us because those visual schedules help him stay on point and with not me saying, okay, you need to do this now. Oh, you need to do this now. Instead, I can say, what do you need to do now for your morning time routine? By the way, if you need a morning time routine, check out the description below for the free download of a visual morning time routine. I hope it helps. Now, he does have learning differences, but with schoolwork especially, he'll often avoid those tasks, try to distract, try to bring up other things, try to pay attention to other stuff going on. I often have to body double with him, which means I'm in the same room with him as he cleans up his room, as he does chores, as he's doing schoolwork. There's often a lot of body doubling going on. We're slowly trying to wean myself away from those situations and giving him more autonomy and chances to figure out these skills, but it's definitely a work in progress. Also, executive functioning skills, time blindness. He has no clue what time it is. Occupational therapy gives him worksheets to do where he's trying to match the time versus the activity and how much time that will take. And he often is quite off on those. He really just doesn't have a very good understanding of time. So that's one thing we're working on. We have clocks in multiple rooms of the house to try to give him that visual reminder. We use timers a ton to help him with time. And we're still working out organization. Organization is a struggle that can be for neurodivergence in general. He also has dyslexia, which can cause disorganization too. And then with ADHD, we're still trying to figure out strategies that work for him. It does seem like he likes to have visual reminders to help him keep on task. I do think those help, and I think timers help, but giving him a space to put his stuff, he's still going to put his stuff in other spots. That's something we're still working on. But also, I'm also working on trying to not let his disorganizedness trigger me because I can also be disorganized. And so it can be a lot for me. Listening to him and allowing him the autonomy to try to figure out his organizational style is something that I'm also working on to help him as well. So I hope you followed along this long, and I would love to hear from you. What are some signs that you knew that your kid had ADHD because of what? What are some signs that you knew it was time to get testing or that you needed to start helping them work through some of those symptoms? I'd love to hear from you. Please definitely chat in the comments below. And also, again, if you need that visual morning time schedule, definitely click on the link in the description and get a copy of that for yourself for free. And